Hey there, booktube. It's Russell. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator, and today I've got a really special treat. I did a reread of one of my all-time favorite authors, Child of God by Cormac McCarthy. Now, I keep proclaiming on and on again that Cormac McCarthy is probably the best author, at least living. The only other person that could be on par with him is Thomas Pynchon, who just so happens to publish just as many books as Cormac does. They don't seem to publish books often. But when it comes to Cormac, I mean, he was influential in how I go about reading. He was very formative for me. I read him not long after I read Ernest Hemingway back in 2017, and I consumed a lot of his outlet, his bibliography, within the span of a year. I'm talking about reading, Blood Meridian, The Road, No Country for Old Men, All the Pretty Horses, Child of God, Out of Dark, First Third of The Crossing. I'm pretty sure there's another one in there I'm not remembering. And apart from maybe Out of Dark, which I do like, but I don't think is great, he has yet to let me down. So this year, I figured, having been over 4 years since I've actually read a Cormac McCarthy book, and how I keep on going on that he's probably the greatest living author, I thought I'd give him a reread, just to see if he holds up, at least to how I am now compared to previously. And he does, absolutely. I've been rereading Child of God. This took me 3 days. It's a very quick read. It's the easiest book of his to read, so there's that. And I'm also reading his most dense book, which is Suttree, about a 500-page Faulknerian-style novel with a lot of $1,000 words. Just so many words where I've had to go to the dictionary just to find out what they mean. Child of God is a different beast altogether. Published almost 50 years ago, I believe. And it's a very sordid tale, very macabre tale. The tale of Lester Ballard, who in the opening pages, there's an auction for his house, and you never find out why why his property is taken from him and is auctioned off. But he's there trying to proclaim it back, trying to get it back, and they hit him and they cast him out, basically. He is cast out of society. And the book is basically details his massive decline, his degeneration into an almost type of man-made monster, and it leads to the town, the county, pretty much all gathering together to try and get back at him, to try and figure out what he's done. Little do they know that in a way they're the ones that created him, that led him down to this path to being who he is. Now the book is split into 3 parts. First part's the longest, about 80 pages. Second part's about 60, and the third part's 50 pages. And I read them all in the span of like 1 part per day type thing, and I was quite amazed at how fast I got through it. In terms of word space, you can get through this quite quickly. And what you do find is that even though this is a book about a man who gets cast out from society, traverses the mountainside and the Appalachian Mountains and the forests, and makes his way from being, a degenerate person who lives in someone else's house, to eventually being a necrophiliac, a necrophiliac, and then turning into a serial killer. What you do find is that you actually start to feel sympathy for him. And one thing I did find on this reread, at least, was that I found that what this book makes itself out to be is a rather intriguing character study. A very good character study, in fact. You find out a lot about Ballard. Some of it through implication. In the first part, for example, every so often you get a chapter where it's almost like someone's from the county's being interviewed, and they talk about Lester Ballard at different portions of his life. For example, one person talks about how they knew Lester when they were children, and how Ballard made this threat towards another kid to go down the hill and pick up something that went down there. So he claims that Ballard always had this sinister type feel to him, whereas another interviewer would say that he got along quite well with Ballard. Another one would go on about how Ballard's, I think, grandparents or parent, I can't remember which, was part of the Whitecaps, who were this notorious group back in the day. And it's just these little things that you piece together. And so I was quite surprised on this reread just how much I got to know about Ballard, especially in a short book. This book is like about 180 pages, and it's pages that are like that. So you actually get fed a lot of stuff within a short period of time. And even though the book doesn't exactly give you a timeline, I mean, to my mind, this book feels like it goes on for months. Definitely not days, and I don't think weeks either. I mean, it takes place during the winter, and after that, I think there's a lot of periods where he's trying to huddle up out of the snow and keep himself warm. It moves along very briskly, which I did not find with even Blood Meridian. Blood Meridian, there are parts where you have to trudge through. This book moves briskly. And that's a compliment to the book, even though I don't consider this book to be amongst his best works. At the time, I think I ranked it like 5th behind Blood Meridian, Suttree, All the Pretty Horses, No Country for Old Men, and The Road. Oh, I'd make that 6th, actually. But what I will say is that even minor McCarthy is still better than 95% of the stuff that gets released today. So that is my declaration as to how good he is as an author. There are passages in this thing where you read them and you're like, oh yeah, that's why he won the Pulitzer, you know. Even though The Road won it on its own merits, there are some wonderful passages in that book too, particularly the last part of it. So now I'm gonna read what I consider to be my favorite part in the whole book. It's a beautiful moment. It's where he's dreaming. So this here is one own section. It's 2 paragraphs. Absolutely beautiful. Lying awake in the dark of the cave, he thought he heard a whistling as he used to when he was a boy in his bed in the dark, and he'd hear his father on the road coming home whistling, a lonely piper. But the only sound was the stream where it ran through the cavern to empty it maybe in unknown seas at the centre of the earth. He dreamt that night that he rode through woods on a low ridge below him. He could see deer in a meadow where the sun fell on the grass. The grass was still wet and the deer stood in it to their elbows. He could feel the spine of the mule rolling under him, and he gripped the mule's barrel with his legs. Each leaf that brushed his face deepened his sadness and dread. Each leaf that he passed, he'd never pass again. They rode over his face like veils, already some yellow, their veins like slender bones where the sun shone through them. He had resolved himself to ride on, for he could not turn back, and the world that day was as lovely as any day that ever was, and he was riding to his death. That's almost prophetic. I think that's absolutely wonderful writing right there. And that's going back to his early days. This was before Suttree and Blood Meridian, even though Suttree was read during and before Child of God was released. I mean, that book was written over a period of 20 years. But Child of God proves that even before his mainstream success with All the Pretty Horses, and even before No Country and The Road, he had it. He had the gift of producing beautiful, articulate, thought-provoking sentences. Some would even say that his earlier novels set in the Appalachia sections of North America are better than the rest of his output. I don't agree. With the exception of maybe Suttree, I think his best output is actually the middle section, which is Suttree and Blood Meridian, which takes place, in Knoxville, Tennessee, through to lower parts of Texas and Mexico. Beautiful books, those 2 alone. But as I said before, minor Cormac is still better than the rest of what's out there. So yeah, the first part is him getting thrown off his property. He resorts to living in this abandoned property that I think is owned by someone. And while he's living there, while he's going to town, it takes him 3 hours to walk to town, he comes across this abandoned car and finds 2 people in there who are dead. And they died after engaging in sexual activity. And he removes the man from the car and proceeds to engage in a sexual act with the dead woman himself. And then it's almost told like a comedy. He keeps leaving the car, then coming back, leaving the car, then coming back. At first it's because he forgot something. Then it's because he came back to check on whether they had money or not. And then the 3rd time or the 4th time, he actually takes the woman from the car back to the property that he's currently residing in. And with the money, he goes to town and buys her there's this whole extended sequence where he's in this mini shop where he's buying lingerie and a dress for this woman, and the lady at the counter is sort of just looking at him weirdly the entire time, trying to figure out what he's doing, because he's answering her questions very weirdly. Like, he doesn't know her dress size, and he doesn't know how much she weighs, doesn't know how tall she is. There's also this wonderful sequence where he's at a blacksmith. It's about 3 pages long, but I was hooked the entire time because I'm a heavy fabricator welder by trade as an apprentice, and I just love the way they talked about, the high input of concentration that is needed to craft metals. So yeah, that part really took me. I really like that. So the first part details his interactions with society and all that sort of thing, including the whole necrophilia thing, which takes place in the second part, I believe. And there's also this wonderful sequence where he goes to a state fair and he has to shoot the red dot from a little piece of paper with an air rifle. First time he doesn't get it, even though he shoots through the red dot. the person tells him he has to get the entire red dot out of the way, and there's this little slither that's left over, so he pays again. This time he shoots the entire red dot out, and he doesn't win this once. He keeps on going again and again until eventually he wins 3 times and takes home 3 prizes. What this proves is that Lester Ballard is dangerous, that he is a very accurate shot, that he is good with a rifle. And one thing I did notice with this book is that there are many passages where he is walking around holding his rifle. It's like another limb to him. It's always a part of him. So after that first part where, you see his encounters with society, you see various almost like interviews with people talking about him. The second part is where the whole necrophilia thing happens, and you see more of a degradation that's happening to him. And it leads to him becoming a serial killer, where he eventually just starts killing people, some of whom he knows, and others just for the hell of it, including a couple in a car who he was almost being voyeuristic towards. And then the third part is his downfall, or not really a downfall, but the third part is where people start to realize what's happening and they go after Ballard. He tries to kill someone and it backfires on him, and he ends up in hospital missing an arm. And about 20 or 30 people take him out of the hospital towards the caves where he was residing after the house that he was previously at burned to the ground. And he refuses to show them the bodies. In fact, he declines to even know anything about dead bodies. That's as far as I'm going to leave it, because the ending is truly something. It didn't end the way or at least how I remembered it. I remember it differently, so the ending was a bit of a shock. Then you have James Franco's adaptation, which, I don't know. I mean, technically it was faithful to the book. It's just that he's not a very good director, so But I think I'll give it a rewatch after I've read the book just to make sure. I mean, who knows? I might enjoy it. So, Child of God is my 6th favourite Cormac McCarthy book, and it is still a 4-star read. That just shows how good of an author he is. He's untouchable. His prose is delicate and stark and has a mythic quality to it. It is astounding. To me, he is the greatest living author, at least in America anyway. I don't know. I'm not very well versed outside of American literature. But he's yet to do me wrong, and I do intend to reread some more of his books. I'm still halfway through Satchery, but I am going to finish that book, and I'm immensely looking forward to the 2 that he has released, 2 that he has coming out in October and November. It should be a phenomenal period. I think it's like the most expected, the most looked at period for books this year, the most anticipated releases of this year. I think people were absolutely shocked when they found out it was coming out, even though there's a YouTube video that shows him reading a section of it like 5 or so years ago. People didn't actually think he was going to release it in his lifetime. So who knows? Maybe he'll release it and maybe he'll win the Nobel Prize. One can only hope, right? Fingers crossed. Nonetheless, this is my review of Child of God, about a solitary man who falls into degradation. Damn good read. Fun read. But a damn good read nonetheless. Child of God. You can read it in one day, I guarantee it. So I recommend this as one of the entry points. You could also go and read The Road or No Country or hell, even All the Pretty Horses. So there's 4 books for you that are good entry points into McCarthy's work, give you different aspects of what he's like. His Appalachian books, the Southern Gothic type ones. Southern Gothic is probably a good way to describe his first 3 books. His Western books, and then the post-apocalyptic book, The Road. So it's all up to you, really. In the end, you decide if you want to read him or not. But I say read him, because he is truly that great. Thanks very much for watching, and if you like what you see, like, subscribe, and comment below. Catch you on the next one. Bye.